defending women would happen in my own family. It happened on a cold Friday night in Portland, inside my daughter's dining room, under a chandelier that sparkled as if it had no idea it was about to witness violence. My son-in-law, Ryan Caldwell, slapped my daughter Chloe 3 times across the face. Not in an argument, not in a moment of passion. He did it calmly, deliberately, and with the confidence of a man who believed nothing and no one could stop him. And the person sitting at the head of the table, his mother Victoria, started clapping. The sound of her palms hitting each other echoed through the room like applause at a play. Except this was real. This was my daughter's face turning red, her eyes watering, her body tightening as she fought to stay upright. Victoria smiled proudly, as if Ryan had finally proven himself. She said something that sliced straight through my chest. Now she will finally learn how to be a proper wife. I remember the exact feeling in my body, a moment of stillness so sharp it felt like time froze around me. Part of me, the mother part, wanted to pull Chloe into my arms. The other part, the lawyer part, began memorizing the moment like evidence. The angle of his hand, the shock on her face, the silence of the other guests who stared at their plates pretending they had seen nothing. Before I say anything else, tell me where you are watching from, because what you are about to hear could happen in any home, in any city, and to any woman who trusts the wrong man. Before that night, I believed I understood every sign of danger a woman could face. For nearly 3 decades, I worked as a family law attorney in Portland, specializing in domestic violence cases. I saw things many people only read about in newspapers. I learned how fear hides behind polite smiles and how silence becomes a second language for women who are hurting. But never once did I imagine my daughter would join the list of women I protected. Chloe was the bright one in our family. She grew up with Robert, my late husband, teaching her how to fix old radios, build little machines, and ask questions about everything. She was bold, curious, and full of laughter. When she graduated as a chemical engineer, she stood on that stage with a confidence I admired. She built a life she loved long before she fell for Ryan. I remember the first time she introduced him. He was charming, polished, and attentive in a way that made you feel chosen just for being in the room. But even then, something bothered me. He listened too closely. He watched too carefully. He smiled as if every expression had been rehearsed. I ignored it. And that became mistake number 1. The shift was so subtle at first that I almost convinced myself it was nothing. That is how these stories always begin, not with a storm, but with a soft breeze that slowly turns into a hurricane. Ryan started by inserting himself into Chloe's routines. He suggested she skip her weekend hikes because it was safer to stay home. He encouraged her to reduce her overtime at work because he missed her. Then he became her driver, her scheduler, her advisor. Little by little, Chloe stopped making choices on her own. The first real warning sign came during a family cookout at my house. Chloe arrived wearing a long-sleeve shirt on a 70-degree day. When I hugged her, she winced. It was so quick I thought I imagined it, but a mother's intuition is rarely wrong. Later that evening, she and I washed dishes while the rest of the family chatted outside. She dropped a glass by accident. It shattered at her feet. Before she could even step back, Chloe whispered, "Please do not tell Ryan." The way she said it, so small, so desperate, told me everything I needed to know and everything I refused to accept. Another moment came 2 months later at her company's celebration dinner. Her boss praised her publicly for leading a major project. Ryan stood beside her, smiling politely, but the tension in his jaw told another story. That night, Chloe left early without explanation. The next day, she told me she was exhausted, but her eyes looked like someone who had been crying for hours. Violence does not start with fists. It begins with control, with fear, with silence, with a woman learning to make herself smaller so her partner does not explode. And my daughter was shrinking right in front of me. If Ryan was the storm, his mother Victoria was the undertow that dragged everything deeper. She entered Chloe's life slowly, almost gracefully, the way a shadow stretches across the floor at sunset. Then, before anyone realized it, she was everywhere. Victoria moved into a condo only 4 blocks from their home. She had a spare key to their front door and used it as if the house belonged to her. Some days Chloe came home from work to find Victoria reorganizing her kitchen. Other days she would discover her clothes replaced by outfits Victoria thought were more respectable. Respectable usually meant dull, shapeless, or decades older than Chloe's age. One afternoon, Chloe found Victoria in their bedroom, going through her drawers. When she told her mother-in-law that she felt uncomfortable, Victoria laughed lightly, the kind of laugh that makes your stomach tighten. "A good wife should have nothing to hide, dear. My son deserves a home where everything is in order." That sentence held the chill of a threat. The true breaking point came after a simple disagreement over dinner seasoning. Chloe had added too much garlic for Ryan's liking. He complained. Victoria sided with him instantly. Chloe dared to defend herself. And that was enough. Ryan shoved her against the wall so hard she saw stars. Victoria calmly walked over, helped her stand, and began explaining how to apply concealer to cover the bruise. Yellow first, then your skin shade, then finishing powder. Her tone was gentle, almost instructional, as if she were teaching Chloe how to knit. Chloe told me later that in that moment she felt something collapse inside her. The version of herself she used to be was slipping away, replaced by a woman who apologized for breathing too loudly. Isolation is not always loud. Sometimes it arrives dressed as concern. Sometimes it has the voice of a mother-in-law who smiles while destroying you. And Chloe had been alone for far too long. That Friday evening in March felt ordinary enough to fool anyone. The table was set with polished silverware. Soft music played in the background. Chloe had spent the entire afternoon cooking Ryan's favorite pot roast, the recipe she learned from her father. She told me she wanted the night to feel peaceful, as if peace were something she could earn with effort. When I walked through the door, I sensed it immediately. The air was tight, as if every molecule carried tension. Chloe greeted me with a smile that did not reach her eyes. Ryan shook my hand too firmly, covering his nerves with politeness, and Victoria watched from her seat like a queen evaluating her subjects. We sat, we talked. Or rather, Victoria talked. She criticized the roast for being too dry. She said the biscuits were cold. She commented that Chloe should wake up earlier if she wanted to fulfill her role properly. Ryan nodded at every remark, as if her words were law. Then it happened. Chloe was refilling Ryan's water glass. Her hand trembled just enough for a single drop to fall onto the tablecloth. One drop. That tiny, insignificant splash was all it took for the facade to rip. Ryan slowly set down his fork. The metallic clang echoed like a warning. His voice was eerily calm when he spoke. "Look what you did." Chloe opened her mouth to apologize, but she didn't get the chance. Ryan stood, raised his hand, and slapped her. Once, twice, 3 times, each strike landed with a sharp crack that sliced through the silence. Chloe fell to the floor, her cheek already turning red. And that was when Victoria clapped. She clapped as if she had just watched a brilliant performance. "That is how she learns to behave," she said proudly. "A clumsy wife needs correction." My body froze for a few seconds, not from fear, from calculation. 30 years of working in courtrooms rushed back into place. Every detail became evidence. Then I stood, slowly, deliberately. Ryan expected me to scream or fall apart, but my voice was steady when I pulled out my phone and dialed a number I had memorized for years. "Commander Hale, this is Diane Mercer. I need an immediate response unit. Domestic violence in progress. Witness present, recording activated now." And then everything changed. The hours that followed felt unreal, as if Chloe and I were floating outside our own bodies. After the officers handcuffed Ryan and escorted Victoria out of the house, the silence that settled over the dining room was almost painful. A chair was overturned. A glass had rolled onto the floor, and Chloe stood there with her cheeks swollen, staring at nothing. I guided her to the car and took her home with me. I refused to let her return to that house, not even for a moment. When we walked into her old bedroom, the one we had left exactly as she had it in college, she sat on the bed and exhaled a breath she had clearly been holding for years. "Mom," she whispered, "I didn't want you to see that. I didn't want anyone to know." I sat beside her and handed her a warm cup of chamomile tea, the same way I used to when she was a child afraid of thunderstorms. "Tell me when it started," I said quietly. "I need to understand everything." For a long time, Chloe stared at the steam rising from her cup. Then her voice cracked. "Mom, do you remember our honeymoon in Italy? The restaurant overlooking the ocean?" Of course I did. She had sent me pictures her smiling under blue skies, her arms wrapped around the man she believed loved her. "That last night," she said, "I talked to a waiter for maybe a minute. He asked about our meal. I told him it was great. When he left, Ryan went silent, and when we got back to the hotel, he called me a flirt. Her hands trembled as she continued. It was just one word, but it changed everything. After that, I apologized for things that weren't wrong. I apologized even when I didn't know what I had done. I thought I could fix it. I listened. I didn't interrupt. I let my daughter pour out years of fear she had swallowed to protect a man who never deserved her loyalty. That night, she cried in my arms as if she were 5 years old again. And I decided that neither Ryan nor anyone connected to him would ever hurt her again. Over the next few days, the house felt strangely calm. Too calm. Chloe slept in late, woke up slowly, and walked through the rooms like someone rediscovering what safety felt like. But quiet never lasts long when abusers realize they are losing control. The first call came from an unknown number, then another, then 5 more. We didn't answer any of them, but the messages began rolling in, each one more calculated than the last. The first message said, "Chloe, I am broken without you. I finally understand what I did. I promise I can change. Please do not let our marriage die because of one mistake." One mistake. 3 slaps and months of psychological damage reduced to a single word. The second message shifted the tone. He claimed he had spoken to a therapist who diagnosed him with impulse control issues. He blamed stress. He blamed childhood trauma. He even blamed Victoria. He wrote, "My mother hurt me growing up. I see now how it shaped me. I will fix this. Just give me a chance to talk privately." And there it was, the isolation tactic. Remove the mother, remove the witnesses, get her alone. The third message was colder. "My lawyer filed a suit against your mother. I did not want that. They acted without my consent, but if you talk to me, we can make all of this go away." I watched Chloe read the messages, her eyes flickering with doubt, with guilt, with the memory of the man she once loved. That is the part most people never understand. It is not the violence that traps women the deepest. It is the apology, the promise, the illusion of who he pretended to be. Chloe whispered, "What if he means it this time? What if he really gets better?" I knelt beside her and took her hands. If he truly wanted to change, he would respect distance. He would respect the law. He would not use threats wrapped in love letters. She stared at the screen again, and tears welled in her eyes. I hate that part of me still cares about him. "You are human," I told her. "Caring does not make you weak. Going back would." That day, she blocked his numbers. And for the first time in years, she looked like she could breathe. Peace lasted exactly 4 days. On the 5th morning, while I was sorting documents for the formal charges against Ryan and Victoria, my phone rang. The caller ID showed an unfamiliar number, but something told me to answer. "Diane Mercer," I said. A woman's voice, elegant and sharp, replied, "Mrs. Mercer, this is Eleanor Briggs. I am a close friend of Victoria Caldwell." Of course she was. She continued in a tone dipped in entitlement, "I am calling because there seems to have been a misunderstanding between your daughter and my dear Ryan. Young couples fight. It is unfortunate, but hardly worth destroying a man's life over." A misunderstanding. 3 slaps now downgraded to a misunderstanding. I kept my voice steady. "Mrs. Briggs, I witnessed a criminal act. There was no misunderstanding." She sighed dramatically. "You're a lawyer. Surely you know things can be handled quietly. Ryan's family is very well connected. It would be best for everyone, especially you, if this matter disappeared." Ah, there it was, the threat wrapped in silk. I pressed record on my desk phone. "Mrs. Briggs, you are attempting to interfere with an active investigation. This conversation is being documented." The line went silent. Then she hung up. Within hours, another hit arrived. My assistant forwarded a photo of a lawsuit delivered to the office. Ryan's attorney had filed a defamation and damages claim for $2 million. Attached to it was a temporary order suspending the restraining order against him, signed by a magistrate with the same last name as Ryan's uncle. Chloe found me staring at the papers. She turned pale. "Mom, are we in trouble?" "No," I said firmly, "we are being intimidated. That is different." But I could see fear crawling back into her expression, the old panic she carried during her marriage. Then she whispered the question I dreaded. "What if he wins? What if I made everything worse by leaving?" I stepped closer. If Ryan wins, every woman who ever left an abuser loses, and I refused to allow that. I contacted a judge I trusted, filed an emergency appeal, gathered evidence, and prepared every document I needed to counter their moves. If Ryan wanted a war, he had chosen the wrong attorney to test. That evening, after I filed the emergency appeal and organized the evidence into neat, labeled folders, I found Chloe standing in the backyard. She wasn't crying. She wasn't shaking. She was simply staring at the herb garden her father used to tend every Sunday morning. The rosemary had grown tall, the thyme had spread everywhere, and the mint, as always, was stubbornly taking over. Dad hated when things got overgrown, she murmured without turning. He said it meant no one was paying attention. I moved beside her. He would want you alive. He would want you safe. That is all that mattered to him. Chloe wrapped her arms around herself as if trying to keep her ribs from collapsing. Mom, I feel stupid for staying so long, for believing him, for letting it get this far. You are not stupid, I told her. You were in love, and you were manipulated by someone who knew exactly how to dismantle your confidence. That is not stupidity. That is trauma. She swallowed hard, then spoke in a trembling voice. The hardest part is accepting that the man I loved didn't exist. He was just a mask Ryan wore to get me. I nodded gently. Losing a fantasy is still a kind of grief. Then something shifted in her face, a small, quiet realization, a faint spark of clarity. I think I'm ready, she said. Ready for what? I asked. Ready to stop feeling guilty for leaving him, ready to take my life back, ready to fight. That was the first time in years I saw her posture straighten, not out of fear but out of resolve. That night she blocked every number associated with Ryan. She deleted the messages. She turned off notifications. And when she placed her phone face down on the table, she exhaled, as if dropping a weight she had carried for far too long. Mom, she said shyly, do you think I'll ever be myself again? You won't be the same, I told her, but you will be stronger, and you will be free. For the first time she believed me. I could see it in her eyes. It was the beginning of her healing. The turning point came a week later on a Tuesday morning so quiet it felt misleading. Chloe was in the kitchen making tea when my phone buzzed with an email notification. It was from the Superior Court. I opened it, expecting a scheduling update. Instead, it was something much bigger. The restraining order suspension had been overturned. The judge reviewing my emergency appeal not only reinstated the full restraining order, but added new conditions. Ryan was prohibited from contacting Chloe directly or indirectly, and Victoria was included in the order for facilitating abuse. When I read it out loud, Chloe covered her mouth with both hands. Her shoulders shook. Not from fear, this time from relief. But the fight was not over. That afternoon, Ryan's attorney sent another message demanding negotiation. He insisted the $2 million lawsuit would proceed unless we met privately. It was a classic scare tactic. And Chloe looked at me with an expression I hadn't seen since she was a teenager, stubborn, unbreakable, done. We're not negotiating, she said, not 1 inch. So I prepared everything for the hearing. Evidence, medical documentation, photographs, audio recordings, and the phone recording from the dinner table the moment Victoria applauded and said, "That is how she learns to behave." That recording became the final nail. On the day of the hearing, the courtroom was packed. Chloe sat beside me, her back straight, her chin lifted. Ryan entered wearing an expensive suit, trying to project confidence. But the moment the recording played, every ounce of that confidence drained from his face. The judge listened carefully, his expression tightening with each second. When the audio ended, he leaned forward and spoke with a calm firmness that left no room for argument. Mr. Caldwell, your actions constitute clear domestic assault. Your mother's words demonstrate active encouragement of violence. The restraining orders will remain in place. The civil suit you filed is dismissed with prejudice. Additionally, this court will open a criminal investigation into both of you. Victoria's mouth fell open. Ryan muttered something under his breath, but the bailiff stepped closer, reminding him to stay silent. Chloe sat perfectly still. Then, slowly, she smiled. Not a wide smile, not a triumphant one. Just a small expression of justice settling into her bones. When we walked out of the courthouse, she took a deep breath of the cold air. "Mom," she whispered, "I'm free." And this time it was true. Life after escaping an abuser never snaps back into place overnight. Healing is not a straight line. It is a series of small steps, setbacks, and victories that slowly rebuild the parts of a woman she thought were gone forever. The weeks following the hearing were exactly that for Chloe. She woke up some mornings full of energy, determined to reclaim her routines. She watered the herb garden. She cooked breakfast without trembling hands. She took long walks around the neighborhood. Other mornings she stared at the ceiling for an hour, fighting the echoes of Ryan's voice in her head. Healing is not about pretending nothing happened. It is about choosing yourself again and again, until you believe you deserve peace. One evening Chloe sat with me on the back porch. The sunset washed everything in a soft orange glow. She held a warm mug between her palms and said quietly, "Mom, I keep thinking about all the women who never make it out." "You did," I told her, "and someday you'll be the reason someone else does too." She looked up, her eyes clearer than I had seen in years. "Do you think I'll ever trust someone again?" "Of course," I said, "but this time you'll trust differently, with boundaries, with awareness, with strength." A few days later, Chloe began attending therapy regularly. She reconnected with old friends she had quietly drifted away from. She returned to her job, and her colleagues welcomed her with more support than she expected. Slowly, she pieced her life back together, not as the woman she was before Ryan, but as someone wiser, steadier, stronger. And I rebuilt myself too. Being a mother means standing guard even when your own heart is tired. It means fighting battles your daughter never sees. It means choosing her safety over your silence. Before this video ends, I want to speak to anyone listening who may recognize themselves in Chloe's story. Abuse does not always begin with bruises. Sometimes it begins with doubt, with isolation, with fear disguised as love. If you are living in silence, you deserve better. You deserve safety. You deserve joy. And you deserve to be free. If this story moved you, please like, share, and leave a comment. Your voice might be